Welcome back. We're up to session 5. Next on our path to understanding how chords and harmony work and where to find chords on the piano, we'll check out the major chord's counterpart, the minor chord. We'll learn how to make the major chords we know into minor ones and learn 3 minor chords with an identical shape. Then we'll see how we can use the C major scale that we learned last time to generate all 6 chords that we know, or that we will know once we add those minor chords. And we'll use the relationship of those chords to that scale to establish a system of numbers for those chords that will help us to hear chord movement and figure out tunes by ear. So let's get started. Let's go back to the C triad that we learned in session 2. It starts on middle C, and then you have the notes E and G. If we take the middle note E down a half a step to the black note just below it, our C major triad becomes a C minor triad. So this C major triad becomes this, a C minor triad. Hearing the difference between major and minor will be invaluable in helping us figure out the chords to the songs that we've heard and the ones that we want to learn. It will also help us hear and understand the colors of the chords we're playing. If we go back to the C minor triad, which is C, the note just below E, the black one, and G, we notice that the intervals in a minor triad are, beginning from middle C, 1.5 steps up to the next note, and that's the black one just under E, and then another 2 whole steps to the note G. We get the same result if we use this same process on our F and G triads. Let's try an F triad. The middle note goes down a half step to the black note just below it, and we get a minor chord. We can do the same thing on G. Play a G chord, take the middle note down a half a step, and you get a G minor chord. So, just as these 3 major chords, C, F, and G, share a common shape, which is all white notes, so do their minor counterparts, C minor, F minor, and G minor. Except in the minor triads, there's 1 black note in the middle of each shape. So what we're trying to do is learn chords by shape and find the other chords that have that same common shape. So this session's minor nugget is this. Any root position major triad becomes a minor one when the middle note, the third, is lowered a half a step. So a happy major chord becomes a sad minor one just by changing 1 note. We'll make this move major to minor by lowering the third in a progression to come that sounds like this. There are 3 minor triads that have all white notes and identical shapes, and we're about to learn how they're related to our white key major triads. The 3 minor triads with the same shape are A minor, so starting on A, you have A, C, and E. And then take the same shape up to D on the bottom, and you get a D minor. And then you go up to E and get an E minor. And notice that I'm using a 1, 3, 5 fingering for all three. So let's play them in a row: A minor, D minor, and E minor. A minor first, and then the same shape up to D, makes a D minor, and then an E minor, one step up. Minor is usually indicated by a small m, as in the graphic shown, or the letters MIN, as in this graphic shown. Both are abbreviations of minor. That's what you'll see on chord symbols. We've learned some major triad chords and now some minor chords, so let's take a minute to see how we can relate them to the C major scale. Each note of the C major scale can be used to generate a triad with the same shape as a C major triad. These triads are named by their root, which is the bottom note. So the root of a C major triad is C. Each of these triads of the major scale can also be represented by a number based on its position in the scale. And these numbers help us to organize the relationships to the root and how they function. So let's take a look at each one of these triads. And we're basing these chords off of the C major scale. C is a major triad and is the 1 chord. Now we're going to take all the notes of the C major triad up one white note to their next position in the scale. When we do this and go up a step, you get a minor chord, D minor, which is the 2 chord in this series of triads. And continuing up, E is also minor and is a 3 chord. The F major triad that we already learned is the 4 chord, and the G major triad is the 5 chord. The A is another minor and is a 6 chord. The B triad is a different kind of triad. We'll just call it B diminuted for now, and we won't really worry about its real name. After that diminuted chord, we're back at the 1 chord on a C major triad 1 octave higher. These chords 1 through 7 are the basis for a huge number of the songs in popular music, rock and roll, blues, classical music, and most styles of music that we'll deal with. Up to now, we've only been playing in the key of C, but in any key, the major scale starting on the root of that key generates 7 different triads, 6 major and minor, and 1 what we're calling diminuted, that relate to that scale and to each other in the same way as those of the C triad did. For example, a G major scale in the key of G could be built up in triads just the way we did with C. So here's a G major scale slowly. Now I'll play it with triads. One tried and true example of these chords is found in a piece many of us have learned to play that goes like this. It's called Heart and Soul. It's in the key of C, and it uses 4 of the triads generated by that C major scale: the C, A minor, F, and G triads. These 4 we've already learned by shape. Now let's number the chords of Heart and Soul using the system we just learned, numbering them according to their position in the C major scale. Refer to the diagram on the screen that has them all spelled out consecutively and identified by number. The first chord of Heart and Soul is rooted on middle C and is the 1 chord, a C major triad. The second chord is rooted on A and is a minor chord, so that's 6 minor, an A minor triad. If we had simply said that it was a 6 chord, that would mean major. It's the modifier minor that makes it clear that it's a 6 minor chord. The third chord in the progression is rooted on F, so that'll be our 4 chord, also a major triad. And the last one is G, another major triad, which is the 5 chord. This particular progression is fairly easy to play because the chords keep the same shape. Each one's a triad on white keys with one unplayed note between each played note. This very progression is the basis for a lot of tunes you're already familiar with, such as You Send Me, In the Still of the Night, Blue Moon, and Stand By Me. So in numbers, we would call this progression 1, 6 minor, 4, and 5. In this case, that's C, A minor, F, and G. Those tunes I just named that you may be familiar with probably use this chord progression in different keys, but the chord function, numbers, and movement are the same. Numbering these chords helps us to hear and understand their function, how they relate to each other. The most important thing to develop is the ability to hear chords move and to learn to play what you're hearing. So here's a helpful approach to hearing chord movement and to learning it by ear. Hum the bass notes you're hearing. I strongly encourage you to start figuring out simple songs by ear by listening to and identifying the chord progressions in them. The first thing to establish when you're trying to figure out a song is what key it's in, and a key is the tonal center of the song. Right now we're just dealing with the key of C, but soon we'll be able to work in the others. The key you're in will be your 1 chord. When learning a song by ear, I start by trying to hear what key you're in and where the chords are moving to by humming along with the bass notes. For example, if I'd never heard Heart and Soul, and I'm trying to figure it out by ear, I'll hum that bass line. First, I'll try to get a sense of what key we're in, where we're beginning and ending. That sounds like the key we're in to me. And I do all this by humming along with the bass note. Eventually, we'll begin to associate the sound of the bass note moving in certain ways with certain progressions, like this 1, 6 minor, 4, 5 movement on Heart and Soul. And again, I'm humming along with the bass notes. Da, and this brings us to today's nugget. You can figure out chord progressions by establishing the key and listening for and humming the movement of the bass. Now let's look at Heart and Soul written out on a chord chart with slashes inside of bar lines designated for the duration of each chord. So I'll play it and watch the chord chart go by with the slashes. 1, 2, 3, 4. And again. As a reminder, when you see just the letter, for example C, that automatically means it's a C major chord. You can use numbers to indicate the chords in any key for all kinds of progressions. For example, let's go back to the chord progression from the previous session using the chords C, F, and G. Using the number system just described, and given that we're in the key of C, the C chord would be the 1 chord, the F the 4 chord, and the G the 5 chord. So let's play the whole progression, C, F, G, and F, and back to C, and I'll count us in. And as you play it, think about the numbers of each of these chords. 1, 2, 3, 4. C, which is the 1 chord, and then F, which is the 4 chord, and then G, which is the 5 chord, back to F, which is the 4 chord, and C, back to the 1 chord. Now let's use these chord numbers with When the Saints Go Marching In. In Saints, looking at the chart, we have C, G, C again, F, C, G, and C. And notice that time I actually moved the range of the F and the G chord down an octave to down here. Since we're in the key of C, the C, F, and G once again are 1, 4, and 5. We want to start listening for how these chords relate, how they lead, and hearing the sound of the root moving to the next note, with that C being our foundation and destination. Do this whenever you're learning a progression or tune, and it will develop your ability to play chords by ear. The numbering thing is a valuable means to an end that helps our ear organize the movement and relationship of chords. The numbers themselves, math and analysis, are the means to the end, but the end in mind is hearing and playing music. Now let's go back to our first chord progression. We're going to make this progression, which we've been playing as a major progression, into a minor progression by making two small changes. First, we'll change the first left-hand bass note to A just below the C originally played. Here was the C we originally played it. Then we'll move the right hand first finger, which was here on this note. We'll move that up one note from G to A. So far we have an A minor chord. The second bar of our new minor chord progression, which is the second 4 beats of the progression, stays exactly the same as it did the first time we played it in both hands. So, looking at the chord in the first bar of the progression, you notice that we have an A minor triad in the right hand with an A bass note in the left hand. In the second bar, we have an F bass note in the left hand. And we have some chords in the right hand that we've yet to identify. We just know how to play them by shape and by the notes that they are. So we have an A minor triad going to something else with an F in the bass on both these chords. For right now, just hear the sound of the entire progression, see where the notes are on the keyboard, feel the shape of them under your fingers, and hear how different this progression sounds after moving just these two individual notes, one in the left hand and one in the right. So the whole progression will sound like this. Let's set our metronomes to 52, get our hands relaxed, and play this progression twice and resolve it back to the original chord, one hand at a time. First, the left hand. Using your fifth finger on the A, 2 octaves and 2 steps down from middle C, and your first finger will go up to F, 5 steps above it. So in time, it'll sound like this. 1, 2, 3. Just the left hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now for the right hand. Our original chord has one small change. The first finger moves up a step to A. The second bar stays the same, so in time the whole thing in the right hand goes, putting the metronome back on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's put the two hands together, playing our chords in time with the click of the metronome. 1, 2, 3, 4. And the whole progression again. And resolve it. Now play that progression in its original form from the first lesson, and notice how different they sound with these very small modifications. We'll play them back to back, first in the original version and then in the minor version. 1, 2, here comes the original version. Now the minor version. and then resolve it to minor. Again, we're playing in time with the metronome, and now instead of playing in the right hand the same beat as the metronome, we'll play double its number of beats by going back and forth to that lower right hand note. So we'll try the minor progression going back and forth like this. One, two, three, four. And again. Being able to keep a pulse at the piano will make every aspect of playing it sound and feel better. As we learn different patterns and rhythms for playing chords, we become like a guitar player strumming or finger picking a guitar in accompanying songs. Experimenting with changing a bass note, chord, or melody note around here and there, as we just did to make our first chord progression minor from major, is a great way to find new colors and to establish what feels and sounds good to your ear. It's great to combine the discipline of working on exercises, pieces, and lessons with doing your own thing at the piano. It's always good to do the organized lesson stuff first, and the free-forming part once you've laid out a little more foundation in the building block process of learning the instrument. As we finish up this session, we've now entered the harmonic world of the minor chord by learning the difference between major and minor. Listen to the solidly minor key tunes listed in the book to develop your ear for this new harmonic color. And practice taking the major triads you learned from now on and turning them into minor ones, just as we learned to do. Knowing the triads of the C major scale will help us understand and hear their chord function, as will the numbers we now associate with each triad's position in that scale. Keep practicing and I'll help you work on these new skills and concepts in the workshop, and I'll see you there.